be a fun love story. But first, from my little niece, 3 pieces of chocolate. Goodman's. I inhaled them within seconds. Delicious. And look at this cute little homemade tag. Isn't that cute? Neighbors across the street. A cute homemade Valentine corn. Howdy, neighbor. Happy Valentine's Day to our favorite neighbors. Not from you know who. And it was a box of 2 fancy gourmet cupcakes. I forgot to give this to my niece. Remember, I got a ton of goodies from, I think this came from Dollar Tree weeks ago. Can't believe I forgot to put that in her little goodie bag. Little, these are little C's candy, milk, chocolate balls, and a dozen red roses from my husband. And it is beautiful cellophane wrapping. I'm addicted to the sound of cellophane now. I want to do some cellophane videos now. And my brother's family, from out of state, sent us a big package of sweets. And look, I love these things. They're these like Italian nougat and nuts. I forget what you call them. I ate every single one. My husband never got a chance. And they come wrapped in these little foil things, paper in a box. What they did, they bought a bunch of stuff in bulk, and they made Valentine packages for like all of us. Man, all the siblings, mom. Love these things. I haven't had these in forever. And they also wrap their goodies in cellophane. Now I'm doubly addicted to the sound of cellophane. I forgot how fun cellophane was. Remember these as a kid, these buttons. I just remember calling them like dots or paper dots. From my niece. Last year, my niece got me the red lips. Oh, sure, I get the pink one. Cute. Original candy covered ornaments. I think originally they were only available in white, and then years later they started coming out in pastel. I think and fun gum. Remember this, a blackjack gum and clove. And Beeman's. The wrapper looks familiar, but I can't recall the gum. This should be fun. Butterscotch hard candy. And these I don't recall, but one of these is licorice flavored. I was talking to my brother on the phone. My mom loves licorice. And most of the stuff he did with Mom in mind. Black licorice. And this cracks me up. It's anise. I think it's like a flavor or a spice or something. All I remember is my Italian grandma used to make these cookies. I'll never forget, around like a holiday or some kind of celebration, my aunts, all my aunts on my Italian side would all get excited about these anise cookies. And as a kid, I could not figure it out. And I used to call them Anison cookies. I'm definitely saving this cellophane. We're gonna do a cellophane video. And look, a third little cellophane. When my niece gave me all her goodies, it was in this cute little cellophane bag. And her card. I like this little, there's like a little pocket thing. And I decorated it. Had that card inside. And it's textured with candy wrappers. Pure decadence. Dreamy creamy. Chocolicious. Extreme. Yum chocolate. Chocolate desire. Love this card. And she also got me, I saw fruit snacks. One for me, one for my husband. And I was so happy to see these chocolate bars. Remember, I did the Dollar Tree haul from my sister. I said she did really good. And these Whitman chocolate bars weren't there. And oh, how I was secretly hoping I would get one. If you can't have C's candy, Whitman's solid milk chocolate will always do in a pinch. In a pinch. In a pinch. Okay, so on to the story time. The love story time. That should be fun. Oh, Reader's Digest. She finally said yes, by Emily Goodman. A lovesick teenager gets the girl 40 years later. Georgine Zimmerman, nay Huber, 1965. 1999, 51-year-old Georgine Martinet Huber received a delivery of red roses. Her husband had recently passed away, so the flowers didn't seem completely out of the blue. But the name on the note that came with them did. The last place she had seen that name, Jerry Zimmerman, was in her high school yearbook from 1965. Dearest Georgine, Jerry's card read, I was a classmate of yours, though I don't believe you knew who I was. I was painfully shy, and you were the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. It was true that Georgine hardly remembered Jerry. Nearly 4 decades had passed since their paths first crossed in the hallways of Farnsworth Junior High School in Sheboygan. Oh, Sheboygan. That name always makes me chuckle. Sheboygan, Wisconsin, where she still lived. Though I now live in the D.C., I keep close ties to Sheboygan, Jerry continued. I return several times a year. And now, to the crux of this letter. I will be visiting the weekend of May 15th. And I'm wondering if we could meet for coffee. I am, however, sensitive to the recent loss of your husband. If this approach comes too soon, I will understand, and I'll wait another 40 years. Why not? Georgine thought to herself as she put down the letter. She was certainly curious to see what Jerry looked like after so many years. If nothing else, it would be nice just to chat with him. She wrote back and agreed to meet with him that spring. Washington, D.C. Jerry anxiously checked his mailbox each day. When Georgine's reply came, he was elated. She finally said yes. Georgine didn't know it, but she had broken Jerry's heart. All those years ago, Jerry's interest in Georgine Huber began when he noticed her in the 9th grade. Her sparkling eyes. I can feel I'm getting choked up already. Her sparkling eyes gave him a euphoric jolt. Whenever they glanced, albeit fleetingly, at him, Jerry's shyness prevented him from saying a single word to her until their junior year in high school. A newly minted driver, Jerry was on his way to school one morning when he spotted Georgine walking with a friend. Before he could talk himself out of it, he pulled over and asked the girls if they wanted a ride, and they did. The friends climbed into the front seat, with Georgine sitting next to Jerry. The beautiful girl he had been pining for was sitting just inches away, and it petrified him. Unable to think of anything to say to break the ice, Jerry didn't even introduce himself. Once at school, his passengers thanked him and went on their way. Jerry spent all day mulling over his next move. His plan was simple. After school, he would drive around till he saw Georgine walking home. Then, just as he had done that morning, he would offer her a ride. She'd accept. She'd sit next to him again. And that would be that, he thought, happily ever after. Well, the last bell rang when Jerry raced to the parking lot and started driving around the school. He soon found Georgine walking with the same girl from that morning, and Jerry pulled over and rolled the window down. Fancy another ride, he asked. Georgine looked at him. Oh no, we're gonna walk. No, Jerry couldn't believe it. In his mind, the three of them were already good friends. He slowly rolled the window back up and drove away, devastated. It only got worse the following year, their senior year. He learned that Georgine was engaged. Jerry didn't dare approach her ever again. After high school, Jerry found work making deliveries for an electrical and plumbing wholesaler, and he enjoyed the job until he was sidelined by a back injury in 1983. Jerry, then 36, was forced to do desk work, which he hated. A divorce and the death of his father added to his misery. Then, one evening, Jerry opened up the Sheboygan Press and saw an ad for the University of Wisconsin. Do you want to improve your life? It read. Intrigued, he read on. The ad advised a meeting with one of the college's counselors at a local library. By the end of the meeting, Jerry was signed up for 2 classes. He wasn't totally convinced more school would help redirect his path, but he really enjoyed his coursework, and he eventually earned a degree in physical geography. Jerry soon left Wisconsin for Spokane, Washington, where he worked as a cartographer in the mapping department of the U.S. Geological Survey. He was later promoted to the U.S. Department of Defense Mapping Agency in Washington, D.C. Moving to the nation's capital was a big adjustment. Jerry, who had been raised on a farm, was accustomed to seeing grazing animals and wide open spaces. In D.C., he found himself surrounded by politics and traffic. He missed Wisconsin. He called home every week, and he returned at least twice a year for his birthday in July and again in Christmas. Usually, one of those times, he says, I drive by Georgine's house just to get a look, and he would see her out and about. He still couldn't work up the nerve to talk to her. Jerry would look in the local phone book for her name, and it was always there beside her husband's. Jerry married and divorced a second time. Neither of his ex-wives ever knew of his everlasting affection for Georgine, though his friends back home did. On one of his semi-annual visits in December of 1998, Jerry caught up with his friend Frank Cooper. Have you seen Georgine lately? Frank asked. No, not at all, Jerry replied. Her husband died. Georgine's husband had succumbed to a brain tumor after being ill with it for nearly a year. All that time, Georgine had been his caretaker. Jerry had to go back to Washington, but before leaving town, he stopped at a local florist. While he didn't want to seem insensitive to Georgine's husband's death, he didn't want to waste any more time leaving his shyness behind. He wrote a note to send with the roses. Composing the letter was easy. The difficult part on that cold winter day was squeezing all his warm feelings for her onto that little card. When he got back to D.C., Jerry was already looking forward to his next trip in May. Once he learned that Georgine was interested in getting together, he couldn't wait. He called her that night, and the two spoke for more than an hour. He came home as scheduled that spring of '99 for a brief weekend visit. At age 51, he was finally going on his first date with a woman he'd been infatuated with for more than 35 years. And here's a picture of Jerry and Georgine with their granddaughters Georgine's beauty hadn't faded a bit. Her hair was different. Jerry says, though she was still petite, he was slender himself, and the first thing Georgine said to Jerry when she saw him was, "Wow, you are skinny." It's perhaps not how Hollywood would have scripted their reunion, but for both Jerry and Georgine, the connection was powerful. While Jerry had longed for Georgine for decades, Georgine had been praying for companionship ever since her husband died. "If you found someone for me," she used to confide in God, "I would love that." The two of them had such a great time on their coffee date that they made plans to see each other again when Jerry came back to Wisconsin for a longer visit in July. Jerry was home for 10 days that summer, and he spent every one of them with Georgine. The pair took daily walks, usually in a park not far from Lake Michigan. On their third or fourth outing, they decided to stroll along the western banks of the lake instead. The waters were blue and the sounds were gold, Jerry says, and my heart was there, or our hearts, I should say. It was a perfect setting for Jerry to confess the full extent of his feelings. "I'm in love with you," he told Georgina. Then he asked her to marry him. "It was totally unexpected," Georgine says, "but I just knew he was the one." She said yes, and Jerry felt triumphant. He now had 2 years to overcome from that oh so long ago. His next trip to Washington was his last. Jerry quit his job with the government, moved back to Wisconsin. Decades earlier, the most beautiful girl in the world married someone else. That winter, the most beautiful girl in the world married him. Their 24 wedding guests received a version of Georgine and Jerry's love story. 40 years in the making. Jerry had written it. Last year, he shared that story with Reader's Digest, with his postscript. For several years, things were great. Then I developed a limp. Georgine knew what it was, but I needed to hear it from a neurologist. Parkinson's disease is now in its advanced stages, but Georgine and I continue to love each other while I battle debilitating symptoms. Moreover, we love the Lord, and we're grateful for what we have together because it's perfect for us. Happily ever after, indeed. Oh my goodness. That was such a good story. Thanks for watching